To advance under these conditions, the Allied infantry had to use infiltration tactics, pushing forward small parties along the hedges or through the fields. If the Tiger's infantry support could be dislodged, it then became vulnerable to light anti-tank weapons, and because it was also restricted by the bocage, these could, in theory, be brought to lethally close range. The Germans were masters of such tactics and employed them in countless local counterattacks, but the Allies, as a rule, neither learned them nor favoured them. Their preferred method of overcoming such a well-organised defence was to call on artillery or airstrikes. Yet often, the enemy was so expertly deployed that the bombardment failed and the line of advance remained checked, the awaiting columns systematically mortared from close range. During July, the Allies continued to batter their way south. Progress was slow, often agonizingly slow. On average, no more than a few hundred yards a day. Amongst senior Allied commanders, there was a growing sense of unease. They possessed a 2-to-1 superiority in manpower. In equipment, especially tanks and artillery, the superiority was massive. In the air, they were virtually unchallenged, yet they were unable anywhere to achieve a decisive victory. Every field was a potential killing zone, every road junction a bottleneck, and every village a fortress. On July the 8th, the British launched a fresh offensive against Caen. The attack followed a massive aerial bombardment in which much of the city was reduced to rubble. On the following day, they reached the town centre, but found the Orne bridges blown and the Germans firmly established amid the ruins on the far bank. Ten days later, the British tried again, this time attacking out of the Orne bridgehead in a bid to encircle Caen from the northeast. Impressed by the destruction wrought on Caen, General Dempsey had ordered a saturation bombardment of the German positions. More than 4,000 aircraft, combined with naval and ground artillery, to batter great swathes of territory for nearly 3 hours. The main thrust of the offensive was launched by 3 armoured divisions, all attacking in echelon out of the Orne bridgehead. These were supported by 3 infantry divisions, 2 Canadian and 1 British. The British advancing with the armour, the Canadians on the right flank, attacking through Caen. Early British intelligence appreciations had indicated the presence of only 3 German divisions east of the Orne. All of them regular Wehrmacht formations and all exhausted after weeks of heavy fighting. But there were in fact 5, 2 of them SS. The first, still relatively fresh, was the Premier SS formation, while the 12th, composed entirely of Hitler Youth volunteers, had proved itself the most formidable. Dempsey's offensive made good progress for only the first few miles, but the basic plan was flawed from the outset. Too much armour had been concentrated in the Orne bridgehead, and the tanks advanced in long columns, inadequately supported either by infantry or artillery. By the afternoon, the Germans had recovered and stabilized the front. British attacks continued for a further 2 days with only modest gains, and by the 21st, the front was once again effectively deadlocked. While operations in the British sector continued to occupy the Germans, holding down most of their armour, the Americans were building up their strength in preparation for a breakout attempt in the west. The offensive, codenamed Operation Cobra, was launched on July the 25th. In what had now become common practice, the attack was preceded by a massive aerial bombardment and supported throughout by concentrated tactical airstrikes. Under the weight of the onslaught, the thin German line quickly folded, and by the 27th, American tanks were racing through open country. On the following day, they reached Coutances, and 2 days later, Avranches, the gateway to Brittany and the west of France. The American breakout clearly signaled the beginning of the end of the Battle of Normandy. With American armor and mechanized infantry fanning out over the Brittany plains, there was no longer any prospect of the Allied lodgment being contained. Common sense dictated a strategic withdrawal, at least to the Seine. But in a final act of suicidal folly, the remnants of 7th Army and Panzer Group West were fed into an offensive that would deliver to the Allies the decisive victory that had eluded them for so long. In early August, Hitler reorganized his shattered forces in Normandy, redesignating Panzer Group West as the 5th Panzer Army, and creating Panzer Group Eberbach from formations looted from 5th Panzer and 7th Army. 5th Panzer consisted of 2 armoured divisions supported by infantry. Panzer Group Eberbach accounted for the remaining 7, though many of these were now so seriously depleted as to be incapable of anything other than static defence. These forces were nonetheless now ordered to undertake an offensive in cooperation with elements of 7th Army, attacking west through Mortain towards Avranches. 5th Panzer was directed to hold the line east of the Veer. When reports of the German build-up reached Bradley, he deployed 5 infantry and 2 armoured divisions in the Avranches corridor, at the same time maintaining the momentum of his own offensive to the south and east. The result was a foregone conclusion. Bradley's left held firm, while his armoured spearheads pressed rapidly inland, threatening a massive encirclement of the remaining German forces west of the Seine. With most of the German armour committed to the Mortain counter-offensive, the British and Canadians were at last able to break out into the more open country to the southeast of Caen. On August the 16th, when they reached Falaise, most of 7th Army and its supporting formations were still west of the Orne. On the following day, with his forces in imminent danger of encirclement, Hitler reluctantly authorized a general withdrawal. Yet, as the trap closed, the German retreat quickly became a rout. Scattered units pressed frantically eastwards, merged